welcome listeners and viewers of Shorts. As you know, this is a series of conversations with HR leaders, talent leaders, and business leaders. And we've had a whole series of them. Today, I've got a very special guest who I'm going to introduce in a minute. And today's conversation is also going to be a little special, while a lot of people talk about talent at the, higher level, the executive level, but in this conversation, we're also going to talk about talent at the blue collar and the supervisory level, and the implications and the issues related to that. So I have with me Mr. Dharm Rakshit. So Dharm, welcome to the conversation, and thank you for making time for this.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity too.
So Dharm has had, he's worked with some of the, best companies, one could, almost blue chip companies. He's currently, of course, the head of HR at Hero MotoCorp, which is in the automobile sector. But he's worked with companies like Coke and Mondelez and L&T and so on and so forth, Tata Steel. So some of the best names he's worked with, and very, very deep experience around, the real manufacturing stuff, what you would call the core of industry in a way. So Dharm, we will talk about that as we go along. And I really appreciate the fact that you bring some real, hardcore employee and investor relations experience to this conversation. But let me get a general sense from you around, what is happening in terms of, talent management in the automobile sector, because that's where the last 5 or odd years you have spent. So what's happening in that sector?
So if I have to just think on this, what actually happened in the last couple of the years, I find the entire 3 things has happened in the entire space. Number 1, something was in the pipeline. This disruption has actually expedited the things. Second, something we have never thought of, now it has become a reality. And third, what we were doing continuously, now we find those things have become real. On these 3 drivers, when I start looking back like this thing, the L&D space, because now the talent is a different kind of talent, what we are actually witnessing in the auto space or the manufacturing side of the business. Right. Previously, it was expected that the manufacturing leader needs to be at the shop. But during this pandemic, we learned from the remote end how you can actually operate out, and you can keep providing the guidance, leadership, as well as keep motivating your employees. And when this thing has happened, we realized this was thing. How we are going to nurture that kind of a talent, that kind of a competency within our leadership. Because entire segment is working upon the 2 factors, the start and the stop. So when the start happens, you need to bring the people back to the shop floor. That point of time, what kind of a competency set you are needing? The people feel safe, people are motivated, people are willing to give their 100%, people are not apprehensive. So from the talent management space and the talent development space, we started thinking of what kind of the inputs should be there, which makes our leader much more agile to handle this kind of the issues what the people are facing. Second, on the functional competency point of view, what we realized that couple of things are becoming redundant. Why we are doing? We started asking the question from ourselves. Something has also moved to the more toward the automation. Are we ready to actually absorb that kind of the tsunami of the automation? Third, what the consumer preferences are also changing from that point of view. What kind of the product design needs to have?
Right.
Because variety of things has happened, and in that very space, there are a new comprehensive agenda started emerging. And we are being driven by that kind of a comprehensive agenda, and we have taken a lot of things in our the horizon of the entire L&D space.
Right. So Dharm, if you take the last part which you talked about, consumer preferences and how that is impacting talent, both from a sourcing the talent point of view, as well as mindset, as well as learning and development, and so on and so forth. Can you give 2 or 3 specific examples of the kind of competencies you need to build around leadership and talent, which are more connected to the consumer preferences, how that is changing from the traditional way of thinking?
So I would just like to bring back the discussion back in the 2020. What happened? The thing that month together we didn't have the revenue because nobody was safe. That point of time, there was a general sense of hopelessness among the leaders.
Right.
And what we realized in the bigger competency at this juncture, what we need to build up. hope, optimism, and the resilience.
Right.
And how we can make our leaders much and more agile, because they have never seen this kind of the scenario in the past. Nobody was prepared for this. At the same time, when we realize that consumer want our bikes, but they don't want to travel to our dealers. They don't want to come to the selling point. So how we are going to change the entire perspective, that the point of selling is not a fixed point, but a point of selling can be also a virtual point.
Correct.
Okay. In that very context, we start building up our virtual dealership kind of. Then what we realize, the second aspect like that the consumer want to also feel and experience the product. How we are going to give the avenue? Yes, the point of selling we can create through the virtual kind of things online and something like this. But are we able to give that kind of experience? And that was a very dominating factor, because of that the consumer preference and the consumer decision making actually depends on.
Correct.
So we started getting that kind of simulations also in dealership. And that was a very point of inflection, because previously when the consumer comes to you, he has already a fixed mind that I am going to purchase XYZ bike.
Correct.
Because I have that kind of the time and that kind of opportunity. When the virtual platform actually happens, then he or she start experiencing the different, and then their preferences start also changing.
Correct.
Second aspect from the consumer point of view, and that needs to be understood from the leadership, and that needs to build up the financial category, particularly in the manufacturing. What a consumer is looking for, it is looking for a connected vehicles. So more and more automation, more and more to a futuristic vehicle. That was required. And from that very point of view, we start building the technical competency to cover all the at different levels of our lives.
Right. No, that's a great example, and this thing. So if I Dharm take that example a little bit to the inside, like you've done, created these virtual selling point and virtual experiences for consumers. Are you also taking some of those principles into the employee segment as well in your overall HR strategy? Are you doing that as well?
So largely, if you see this thing, just now yesterday we came out with that the thing that bringing back to employee to the workplace.
Okay.
Because all the funds were missing out. Because when you are a human being, you also require the chemistry, and the virtual platform doesn't provide that kind of the emotional attachment. Okay, it's more a work-to-work kind of relationship. But largely, if we have the two segments. One segment was completely operating 100% from the workplace.
Yeah,
I gave quite a new word, because normally we used to keep listening WFH. I tell the thing WFW, working from the workplace. Okay, that was the people who were working in the manufacturing.
Right.
Besides the thing, who were not working in the manufacturing, WFH, and we keep going up, going down. So our peak point of time, say this thing, it was 0% population available within the office. But however, at the same time, when the COVID situation started going down, then we started ramping. So we have developed a C graph kind of a thing. But at the same time, what we are also doing is that we are working on the different variety of the policies. That how we are going to support our employees who are working on the work from the home. So say for setting up the infrastructure, say giving that kind of the etiquette, because initially what we realized is that what is the measurement of the performance in the WFH.
Right.
And normally the leaders were always looking for the measurement of the performance in how many meetings I had. And that was the measurement of my performance. So they try to book their calendars from since morning to the till late evening. And since now it is only just a click to the something and then I'm getting connected. So I was also getting a call in the late of the night, 9:30. I am sent a link, can you just come? So we realized that is a digital dexterity is also harming the people. People personal time is being encroached.
Correct.
And another thing, interesting aspect, WFH, you might have also realized, people come in any kind of a thing. Someone is just sleeping, just got up and come here.
Yeah.
Okay. Appearing on the. Another peculiar thing, what I personally feel, and I have realized this thing, my entire home has become now the public place. Oh, yeah. My entire nook and corner of is known by my audience because I'm sitting here. What is the so privacy has completely gone.
Correct. No, that's an interesting viewpoint. So then from a this whole, like you said rightly, there are lots of positives of technology, and bring, virtual elements as you bring to the consumer, and help the consumer become more connected with the company and the product. And you can do that with the employee as well. But at the end of the day, there is this whole human being at the end of the chain, and there are other things which are required, because humans require that a different set of things to also connect, as an employee, and not just a clinical way of seeing somebody on the Zoom call like we are doing today, right? So I think a cup of coffee with somebody is far more valuable. But let me take you to a slightly different space, right? You've got very, very deep experience in both industrial relations and employee relations in general, or employee relations broadly, with industrial relations being a part of it. What is happening with what are the key trends you see in the blue collar space? So let's talk about blue collar, and then I'll come to the supervisory space as well in a while.
So I will just go back 2 years back, when the entire first time we started witnessing the pandemic. A lot of the apprehensions were. First we went into the mode of the stopping mode, and then we slowly starting. That point of time, we also witnessed the reverse migration. And the reverse migration also told us that in future, how the workplace demography is going to change.
Right.
Because the people who have gone back, 100% people are not coming back. Okay. So how we are going to fill up that very space, the vacant space? There were two opportunities to fill up that very vacant space. So either you start looking for the fresh pool of the people, or you are looking critically examining that whether those jobs are still needed, or we have to the different way of it. So that was largely on the workforce availability point of view.
Right.
Second, the mentality point of view, if you see this, thing, the people were quite apprehensive while they were coming back. And the people, I'm not talking about the blue collar workforce, or my supervisor cadre, my managers also, because the family were quite apprehensive when you are going back to the workplace. How the workplace gives you that kind of the confidence and inspiring the trust that the workplace is safe and secure. So before starting reviewing all the plants, what we started doing, we changed the entire work structure. The infrastructure were completed, a lot of the automations, lot of the places where the touchless kind of things were.
Right.
Even you see this thing in the motorbike kind of thing. So we have the assembly lines, and the assembly lines, the people work shoulder to shoulder, and the government regulations where they are like this thing that 6 feet distance are required. But 6 feet distance is required for what? It is to create a physical. If I can create a physical barrier, then I am creating that kind of the purpose.
Correct.
And the purpose was more important than the what we are being told. So what we started doing, the thing between the two persons, we started providing the air curtain kind of thing. So we are separating the persons, creating the physical barrier. So persons are not waiting. But at the same time, interesting point of things like the thing, we started giving the virtual tour to all the employees. They started seeing the new workplace, and that actually started giving inspiring trust to not to the employees but their family members too. Right. And that point of time, we also got connected with the family members and giving that kind of confidence. Every day we used to have the webinars. So I'm not going to touch upon what we were doing with the thing, but what are kind of the changes and trends I was witnessing.
Right.
Union, instead of becoming confrontationists, they started realizing the importance of the employer and the workplace. They become much and more collaborative. And that's why you see this thing. In the span of the last 2 years, several kind of the settlements have happened in the auto, outside of auto, FMCG, other kind of thing. Right. And largely the people are coming, both the employer and employee have understood their relevancy. And they have become much and more realistic from both the sides. Okay. So last 2-3 years, I have not witnessed any say the major industrial strike kind of. And that is I think that is actually changing the entire landscape of the employee relations of this very country.
No, that's a very good point you make, and in a way you can almost say that that's a very positive fallout of the COVID situation. That the relevancy is the word you use. That both employers and employees are finding a new ground in a way to collaborate and trust each other, kind of a thing, rather than be, let's say, more confrontative, if I may call it that. So I think that is that's good to hear, because I think that's always good for both the manufacturing sector, but also in general for the country, and where we are going with various things, kind of thing. But so there's a specific word you
So
use.
if I am permitted to add something here,
Sure,
I will
please,
just that
please.
not only the employer implying the government and the courts also realized.
Mm.
And I will just give a very specific example. When the lockdown happened, and under Government of India declared under Section 10 of the Disaster Management Act, every employer needs to pay. Okay, even the work is happening or not happening. And there was a court case which went to the Supreme Court. And I still remember this thing from the employer side. It was the arguments were being made that the work, what is the definition of the work, and that the work has not happened, the wage has not to be paid. Okay. Private side was looking like this thing under Section 10. Implementation of Section 10 it doesn't actually impact the wage and something like that.
Right.
But I realized one thing very interesting kind of a thing that the other party also argued, and then after the Supreme Court gave the another date, and the date which was happening post the disbursement of the salary.
Okay.
Supreme Court that day would have told this thing, okay, it is unconstitutional, ultra virus, you are not supposed to pay. But everybody gave the time so that the humanitarian case of the each and every institution also emerged out. Even the employer side, they were confident enough that my side is constitutionally right, but they didn't oppose. They didn't ask the thing, okay, make the interim stay. So the another factor which was a very, very interesting factor, and which we should leverage, the humanitarian side of the either employer, employee, government, as well as the courts also emerged out for a common cause.
No, but that's that also speaks very interestingly to the view that when there is a common enemy, then our opportunity to get together and fight for a common cause is actually much better. And that of course all management theories teach that, but we've now seen that in practice in a way, right? So
very rightly.
So Dharm, let me go to a slightly different level of people, right? So there's this whole what traditionally has been called the supervisory cadre of people in manufacturing. And many of them now are better educated than in the past. Aspirations are very different. They are very upwardly mobile. A lot of young population in this country anyway. So again, in that sector of people, in that middle band, if you want to call it that, what are the 3 or 4 key things you are seeing as changing in the next maybe 3 or 4 years? Do you see any significant changes happening there?
Qualified engineers were so far not willing to make their hand dirty on the software, and which has been now accepted.
Okay.
This has been further been fueled by this kind of the crisis. So industry needs to develop the alternative mode of how we are going to create that kind of the link between the workman as well as the management, the supervisors, and the people who are working, operating out the software. And that's why I think the more and more relevancy of the skill universities are, because a couple of the places the skill universities are taking place. They are actually giving you the dual mode of education, where actually you see this thing. I am getting acquainted with the industry environment, because industry environment chemistries are completely different.
Right.
That's the first, I think that is the change what I am. Second kind of a thing that your workmen are not an old age kind of a thing. They are also having aspirations. They are previously, whether it was a strength or weakness, workman joins an industry, remains in industry for till the age of their superannuation.
Right.
And that was one of the factors to shape up your entire industrial relations scenarios. Right. Now, what you find is the workmen have also become mobile. They have also aspirations. They are not a very traditional kind of the workmen that my son or my daughter are going to become a workman. They are also looking forward that they in the going forward, they should also become a manager or something. Okay. Right. So their mindset is completely changing. So this link to the middle management also think from a different point of view. They should start taking the individual as a whole, not as a person who is just coming to work for me, because he has a family also. His aspirations are also there. So while this I am seeing the thing that while we are nurturing that very talent, not only the functional competencies are required, more and more behavioral competencies are required.
Right.
Okay? And if you see this thing, basically the old classical theory tells that the three competencies are required: the technical skills and the human skills and conceptual skills.
Yeah.
Middle management, the more and more human skills are, which is, last few years I found something that was eroding up. Now it needs to be built up.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a good viewpoint, Dharm, you're bringing in. So give me maybe I'm sure you have a lot of stories, right? Because you've been sort of in a way, ET has honored you as one of the top 50 thought leaders in HR, earlier this year. So what are the 2 or 3 of your favorite HR stories? Let me ask you a couple of, if you were to just tell me a story, assuming that I am a novice in HR, what are 1 or 2 stories you'd tell me which would shape my thinking?
First of all, when a crisis comes, take it in a person. When the crisis came, I will just give you the relate with the recent kind of thing. When the crisis came, that hit us on the somewhere in the end of the March 2020.
Yeah.
Most of the people were just bogging down to what we are going to do. That point of time, I thought to think of what the opportunity lies ahead of us. And one of the opportunity lies, I really realized this thing that after the post, when we are going to restart, because I was not bogged down with like the thing of what is today. I was more and more interested after a couple of the months down the line, when we are going to restart, what will make the people to stay back with us? What will drive them to come back to the office? What will drive them to work, give their wholehearted support to us? Okay. And then after we started building a lot of things, I started helping my comp and team, my policy teams and other people. Like I said, what kind of, this should be actually, this is the time, the 1 month, 1.5 month time when we're sitting, mostly the sitting either, review all the policy, review, make it much more contemporary kind of a thing, make it a more and more implicit. Right. And that actually became with a very, very mind-boggling kind of thing, which nobody has thought that, particularly I think auto sector, we were the first one to announce that we are going to be unlimited setting. And that was, that started building up the trust, because it was a trust-based.
Right.
Then after when the people are working back into their homes, are we going by taking just only the work, or we are supporting it? So what kind of infrastructures are required? And that very interesting kind of thing, we decided that we need to give X amount to our people. Okay. So how to we can make it seamless, instead of asking, give me the voucher, give me the bills or something like that. I'm sorry, we will give you the X amount in your salary. We trust you. You will create your own. That is the one story. Second story, like this thing, when the leadership is actually getting cowed down by the pessimism, what will happen? Okay. Then at that point of time, how much time you are spending with them and telling you the upside? Okay. That was another aspect what I started building.
Yeah.
Third important story, I will just tell you another very interesting story that is not driven by me, but I was driven by that kind of experience. When we actually opened up our factory, and government has given us the thing that transport service will operate at the capacity of the 50%. Right. In that very context, we need to double our bus transport service. And the union came to us and telling this thing, do one thing, don't run the transport within a periphery of things. It will come on our own. And that I found from where it was coming. Because during that 1.5 months, we were completely supporting it. So you need to come at the forefront, start at the crisis time or any kind of thing when the things are not stand for your people, and then elicit the cooperation from them. They will stand for it.
Yeah. No, that I really like that last story where you're basically saying that you stretch your hand out as a leader, and others will stretch their hand out to reach out to you any which ways. Yeah. So I think that whole cooperation, collaboration, whatever you call it, but I think that's a great story. So Dharm, I know we can keep discussing, and there are many other topics to discuss, and I do hope that we'll be able to catch up over a cup of coffee or a drink sometime soon. But in the meanwhile, thank you very much. The format of the shorts does not allow me to go beyond a particular time, but there's been a lovely conversation and some great thoughts and examples. I really like your practical approach. So, and the examples and the stories you quoted. So I'm sure our listeners and viewers will find this, exciting and useful as well. So thank you again for your time. Much appreciated. Thank you very much.
Thank you, many thanks for giving me this opportunity. And I wanted to spend more time because I was also enjoying this very conversation because it was quite a thought-provoking conversation. You were taking a lot of things, and I was really realizing, okay, where the mistake has happened, where could have done better. So certainly, I look forward to the opportunity to share a cup of coffee with you in the physical format.
Absolutely. So thank you, Rakshit.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks.